At Christmas dinner, Dad announced, "You're a burden, and you can't live with us anymore." The next day, when I started packing my things and told them I would stop paying the bills, Christmas dinner was almost over when my father dropped his fork. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're a burden, and you can't stay here anymore." At first, I thought I'd misheard. My mom let out a nervous laugh, as if she wasn't sure if he was serious. But then he just sat there staring at me, waiting for a reaction. The room went silent. My younger sister, Natalia, froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. She looked at me with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. I swallowed the piece of ham I was chewing and set my fork down. "What? Did you hear me?" he said. "You've overstayed your welcome. You need to go." I stood there trying to process it. I was 23, had a stable job, and could have moved out long ago, but I stayed because they needed me. I paid the electricity, the internet, groceries almost every week. Things they couldn't afford because my dad had been unemployed for years and my mom worked only part-time. I wasn't a burden. I was the reason the lights stayed on in that house. And now, out of nowhere, they were kicking me out like I was useless. Mom finally spoke. "Maybe we should talk about this later." But Dad interrupted her. "No, Eduardo, this is my house. I make the rules, and I say he shouldn't be here anymore." Natalia set her fork down. She was only 16, and I could see she was scared. She looked at our parents as if she didn't recognize them. If they could kick me out so easily, what did that mean for her? I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to argue or beg. If they wanted me gone, fine. But they weren't ready for what that actually meant. I leaned back in my chair. "All right," I said. My dad straightened up like he'd won some imaginary battle. My mom still looked uneasy but didn't say anything. Maybe she was in shock, or maybe she didn't care as much as I thought she did. I stood up, took my plate, and brought it to the sink. I didn't want to give them the reaction they wanted. Instead, I looked at Natalia, who still sat there tense and confused. I gave her a small nod. She was the only one at that table I still cared about. Dad took a sip of his drink as if nothing had happened. Mom went back to poking at her mashed potatoes. Natalia kept staring at me as if she wanted to say something but didn't. I didn't stay to finish dinner. I just left. I didn't say another word that night. I went straight to my room, closed the door, and started packing. I wasn't going to waste my time trying to understand why they wanted me gone. If they wanted me to leave, I would leave. But that also meant they would lose everything I was paying for, and I wasn't going to warn them. I packed in silence, but I could hear them talking downstairs. My mom's voice was low and nervous. My dad's was firm, like he was trying to convince her of something. I heard a few phrases. "He's old enough. We can manage. He should have moved out years ago." An hour later, Natalia knocked on my door. I opened it, and she slipped inside, closing it behind her. She looked upset. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. "I don't know," I replied, shoving my laptop into my bag. "But I'm leaving tomorrow." She shook her head. "This is insane. You pay for everything. They can't even buy food without you." "That's not my problem anymore," I said. She bit her lip, clearly holding back more tears. "Where are you going?" "I'll figure it out," I said. The truth was, I had some money saved, but I hadn't planned on moving so suddenly. I'd need to find a place fast, maybe crash with a friend for a while, but I wasn't worried. I'd be fine. They wouldn't. Natalia hesitated. "Can I?" She stopped. I knew what she wanted to ask. She wanted to come with me, but she was still in high school, and no matter how much I hated leaving her behind, I couldn't take her with me. "You know they'd never allow that," I said. She looked at the floor. "Yeah." She stood there a while longer, not wanting to leave. Finally, she sighed. "You're going to regret this." I smiled. "I know." The next morning, I left before anyone woke up. I carried my suitcases downstairs, loaded them into my car, and looked at the house one last time. No sadness, no regret, just relief. Then, as I pulled out of the driveway, I opened my banking app and removed my name from every bill: electricity, internet, water, even Netflix. I paid for everything. Without me, it would all get cut off in a month. I smiled, shifted the car into drive, and left without looking back. Over the next few days, I stayed at my friend Mike's apartment while looking for a place of my own. His couch was terrible. His dog, Rolando, kept staring at me while I tried to sleep, and his roommate kept asking if I planned on staying forever. But none of that mattered. I was free. No more paying for a house I didn't even want to live in. No more pretending to respect a man who had no problem kicking me out on Christmas dinner. No more being treated like a walking ATM. I was finally doing something for myself. 3 days later, my phone began to ring. At first, I ignored it. 7 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, which was surprising because he never called me. A few messages from Natalia. I ignored those 2 until she sent this one. "They're freaking out. the power got cut off. I smiled, really smiled. They thought the bills would magically pay themselves. Then another, Dad is furious. He says you did something to the house. Oh, this was getting good. In the following days, I ignored all attempts to contact me. Mom kept calling, texting, even trying to message me on social media. Dad, on the other hand, only called those 2 times and never again. He probably expected me to come crawling back, but that was never going to happen. I stayed at Mike's place while searching for a permanent home. He was pretty understanding. His roommate, though, was an idiot, always asking when I was leaving, making jokes about me being homeless, complaining when I used the kitchen, but none of it bothered me. I knew it was temporary. Meanwhile, it seemed like my family was falling apart. Natalia kept messaging me with updates about the chaos at home. First, the power was cut. Then the internet. Water took a bit longer. But when that finally got cut too, Mom panicked. She's desperate, Natalia wrote. She says she doesn't know how we're going to shower now. I couldn't help but smile. They kicked me out thinking I was a burden. Now they were living in darkness, without water, not even able to watch TV. The cherry on top came when Natalia sent another message. Dad is furious. He's breaking things in the living room. The image of my father throwing a tantrum because the bills didn't magically pay themselves gave me immense satisfaction. He says he'll figure something out, but Mom is crying in the bedroom. Of course he said that. My father was a failure, but he always pretended he had everything under control. This time, he didn't. I ignored everything and focused on my life. 2 weeks later, I finally found a place to live. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I used part of my savings and rented a small furnished apartment. It had a decent couch, a comfortable bed, and most importantly, it was far from that house. The day I moved in, Natalia texted me, "I need to get out of here." My heart sank. I knew she was suffering, but I couldn't just take her with me. She was still a minor. "You know I can't," I replied. She took a while to respond. "I know, but I can't take it anymore." I wouldn't have been able to either. Living there with no power, no water, no internet, with my father yelling and my mother crying all the time. A real hell. But her problem wasn't my problem. I was free. A few nights later, the inevitable happened. It was late. I had just showered and was ready for bed when my phone rang. "Mom." I rolled my eyes and declined the call. Minutes later, Natalia sent a message. "Answer." I sighed and finally picked up. Before I could say anything, I heard my mother's desperate voice. "Please, come home." I couldn't help but let out a short laugh. "No, we need you. I know your father was harsh, but he didn't mean it. He said exactly what he meant," I replied coldly. "You kicked me out. Now deal with it." She started sobbing on the phone. "We can't. The house is falling apart. Sounds like a you problem." She cried harder. "Please, we know we messed up. But please." Should I have felt pity? Maybe, but I didn't. The whole time I lived there, I paid the bills, helped however I could, and in the end, they treated me like garbage. Now they wanted me back. I wasn't stupid. No, I repeated. I hung up before she could continue. I lay down and slept deeply, for the first time in years, without anyone treating me like an ATM. The following days, the calls continued, Mom begging, Natalia asking for help, and Dad, well, he never tried to contact me again. Then finally, Natalia sent one last message. "He's talking about selling the house." That surprised me. As useless as my father was, I never imagined he'd go that far. "Selling it?" I replied. "Yes, he says he can't take it anymore. Mom is hysterical, but he's determined." That made me laugh. So deep down, my father really was as weak as I always thought. If he couldn't manipulate someone into paying his bills, he simply gave up. I wanted to feel something for them, but I only felt contempt. I turned off my phone and went to sleep. But deep down, I knew the story wasn't over yet. Over the next few days, I ignored all attempts to contact me. I blocked my mother. My father never tried calling again. And Natalia, well, she kept trying. But I needed time. I needed to leave all that behind and focus on my new life. In my small apartment, everything was finally coming together. I had peace, silence. I could spend my money on myself. My salary, which used to vanish paying bills that weren't even mine, now allowed me to enjoy luxuries I never had before. I ate at good restaurants. I bought new clothes. I joined a gym. The feeling of freedom was indescribable, but I knew it wouldn't last. 2 weeks later, when I had almost forgotten everything that had happened, I received a message from an unknown number. "I need to talk to you. It's serious." It was Natalia. I sighed. I knew she'd eventually try to pull me back into the house drama, but something about her message felt different. "What happened?" Her answer came immediately. "They're going to sell the house. Dad is already negotiating with a buyer." I laughed with disdain. It didn't affect me at all. "So what?" "He's selling everything, even your stuff." I froze. "My things?" "Yes, your computer, your TV, even your bed. He says that since you didn't want to come back, you don't need them. A heat rose in my chest, a rage I hadn't felt in a long time. That bastard kicked me out of the house, treated me like a burden, and now he was getting rid of my things like they were never mine. I took a deep breath. Give me the buyer's address. Natalia took a few minutes, but she sent it. The man was interested in the whole house and was already negotiating the furniture. I grabbed my keys and left without thinking twice. The drive was short. When I arrived, I saw a middle-aged man chatting with my father outside the house. I didn't think twice. I got out of the car and walked straight toward them. "Are you out of your mind?" I asked, my voice filled with anger. My father looked surprised, but quickly changed his expression to the usual one, disdain. "Oh, so now you show up? There's nothing here for you." The buyer looked uncomfortable. "Is there a problem?" I ignored him and stepped closer to my father. "You can't sell my things." He laughed. "Can't I? You chose to leave. You don't need anything that's here anymore. I paid for every one of those things." I shouted, "If you want them back, buy them." His answer lit a fire in me. I could have let it go. Could have walked away and forgotten everything, but no. This man kicked me out after years of supporting them, and now he wanted to profit from my belongings? No, he wasn't getting away with it. "Fine," I said, smiling. "Sell the house." My father frowned. "What? Sell it," I repeated. "But when you do, you won't have anywhere to live." He laughed mockingly. "With the money, I'll buy an apartment." My smile grew. "With what money?" Silence fell between us, and then he understood. He thought he would sell the house, collect the money, and start a new life. He had no idea what I had already done. In the following days, I used everything I knew to get revenge. I called the electricity company and notified them that the house was being sold. Any outstanding debt had to be paid before transferring ownership. I did the same with water, gas, and even back taxes. There were many unpaid bills. My father was about to receive a big payout from the sale, but now, most of that money would go straight towards settling his debts. That alone would have been enough. But I went further. I remembered something important. The house wasn't only under his name. My mother also had legal rights to it, and she had no idea he was selling it. So I called her. Her reaction was shock. "You never call me. I just wanted to let you know your husband is selling the house without telling you." The silence on the line was so heavy I could hear her breathing, holding back her reaction. "What?" I told her everything, every detail. She was stunned. "He can't do that." "He can if you let him." I knew that despite everything, my mother still had power over him. And I was right. The next day, Natalia texted me. "They're fighting horribly." My father tried to defend himself, but he had no argument. He couldn't sell the house without my mother's consent. And without the sale money, he was finished. That night, Natalia called me. "You won't believe it." "What happened?" "He's leaving the house." I leaned back on the couch, satisfied. "Really?" "Yes. Mom told him that if he wanted so badly to sell everything, he could leave on his own." I knew my mom would never have had the courage to do that on her own, but once she discovered what he was planning, it pushed her past her limit. My father, without a home, without money, without a wife, had nowhere to go. "Where is he going to stay?" I asked, curious. Natalia laughed. "He's calling his friends asking for a couch to sleep on." I burst into laughter. It was poetic. For years, they made me believe I was a burden, a weight. And now, the only burden in that house was him. "You won," Natalia said, still laughing. "I just did what I had to do." "Do you want your things back?" I thought for a moment. "No, leave them there. I had already started a new life. I didn't need anything from that house. Not the items, not the memories. The only thing I took with me was the certainty that I would never let anyone take advantage of me again." Months passed, and I continued with my life without looking back. My small apartment was my refuge, my freedom. I no longer had to pay bills that weren't mine. I no longer had to listen to my father's complaints, or my mother's worries, or see Natalia trapped in that toxic environment. Speaking of Natalia, she was the only one who truly stayed by my side. We kept in touch, and I helped her however I could, without letting her fall into the same trap I was in. I pushed her to study, to prepare for leaving that house as soon as she could, so she would never end up in the situation I was in. And our father? Well, after Mom kicked him out, he had no choice but to face the consequences of his own life. With no money, no friends willing to take him in, no home. The last I heard of him was that he was staying at the house of a distant relative, someone who didn't know his past and decided to give him a chance. But I know how that will end. He was always a burden, and soon they'll kick him out too. The house I grew up in is still my mother's. With great effort, she paid the debts and managed to keep it without anyone taking it from her. I never went back. I had no reason to. The young man who walked out of that house on Christmas night with his suitcases in hand and removed his name from every bill, never looked back, and he never regretted it, because in the end, I won, and he lost everything.